Hey, Scott Abel, and it looks like Patrick Bozek. I just did a video for you on another topic about half an hour ago. Can't remember what it was. I'm doing so many videos this morning here at McDonald's that it's Sunday morning, so I'm trying to catch up on the videos because I wasn't able to go to TCOM a couple weeks ago or last week because I had I was supposed to sing at the TCOM band, sing and play at the TCOM band, and to give two talks. And I got COVID plus bronchitis, and the combination of those two kind of put me out of commission for a few weeks. And so I still got my Halloween voice, though it's the 13th of November. And so we're working on the doctors and I are kind of working on trying to get some things to get rid of this cough you're gonna hear, and the Halloween voice. We're trying to kind of deal with that, but that's not the thing of my video here. So Scott, I saw this post here a few days ago, and I'm in a backlog of trying to catch up. So that's what I'm doing Sunday mornings. You talked about the idea of generating revenue for content creation, and what do you want to call it? Content creation, content ops, or whatever we want to call this. Language ops, content ops. I mean, it's languages in general. It can be source languages, it could be translated languages, it could be all kinds of stuff. But I see this as a spectrum, right? So it's just I've worked on both sides, so I've kind of dealt with this for years, both speech and text, and multimodal, and even videos and audio and visual and all kinds of stuff. So I've worked in all these things, right? So but I think the whole thing that you're talking about, content, generating revenue for content. I've heard this talked about. I've heard this suggested for so many years, um, and I've always brought up, whenever it's brought up, it's commercialization of content. Okay, of content that historically has been support content. Now, there's a difference between the market. There's two different types of content, right? That fall in this. The marketing content is used for sales, right? But it's very hard to establish the relationship between the results of marketing and how that actually impacts sales. I gave a conference talk at SAP about how I was doing social media stuff and the videos, and how it increased visitor retention on the channels of the products that we were talking about, the what's new stuff. But the whole question that was brought up, from all the people, is how does it influence the sales? And the marketing people that are attending says this is just boosting, right? It's just creating us way more visibility. But the whole question is, how does that convert into sales, right? And is there direct sales and direct sales from that? That's a big thing. So the marketing content stuff and sales is one factor, and I think this is one thing to think about. And to be able to track that, tracking engagement, tracking all that, that's a whole topic, right? Maybe I'll try to address it here, but depending on how long the video I'm going to turn it into, right? So I have no idea. The second area that I think is, now that's marketing content, and that's the marketing people are usually different people than the people doing technical content, right? In general, not always true. I've worked in technical. I was brought in to do technical content writing, and then I ended up doing all the marketing stuff and the sales stuff too. So, and worked with the sales, business owner, and then I went into doing business sales afterwards. So, I'm business development director of other companies. So, I mean, I've done this and benefited from both, and have worked in many different things, doing all the marketing stuff and the RFPs and all the stuff selling, right? So, not just the technical stuff. It helps have the technical stuff, the background, to be able to understand a lot of the stuff, but you got to have the skills to be able to turn into marketing copy, right? And all that, and make it sellable. I just invented a word here. Sellable. Maybe not. I'm sure other people came up with it before me. But the other one is the content that is, a lot of I think the bigger issue, the people that in the technical content, the non-marketing content, right? The support content. It tends to be support content, user manuals, install manuals, configuration manuals, upgrade manuals, all these manuals, guides, and stuff, and the support FAQs and all this stuff, right? So I'm not going to try to say everything that's possible, but you can see all these things that are usually supporting content, right? and they can be, they're supporting in the sense they help the user to get the thing done. They're actually the deployers, people setting up the systems, people deploying the systems or whatever. They're helping them get it. There's service manuals, right? Not quite service manuals are actually to do repair. This is actually user manuals for all these people, right? I've written a lot of these, so I mean, I've written all of them. Um, and 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 then you have the support content, which for the professional services, customer support, in which they got problems, right? Problems installing things, problems getting the license, problems doing all kinds of stuff. And you have problems, you want to have the support things, and you got to have FAQs to help that. Your goal is to have it so people can actually read the manual. A lot of the problems, a lot of the things that we deal with and all this is the people only read the manual. I mean, you got to be honest. I buy a lot of musical equipment. I've actually got here. I just bought some wireless, capture things for doing wires for my guitar cables and piano cables. And when things don't work, I actually go down to the music store a lot, and I like buying a lot of pedals. I just finished my pedal boards. I had 2 pedal boards, and to learn how to use the things, I try to just go for it, right? Just like everybody with a watch, you just do it, right? And when you have problems, you start look at the technical manual, right? Like yesterday, I was looking at how many was the voltage and the milliamperes, amperage, to be able to figure out if I could power it with my power substation or not. But I'll only look at it if I have a problem, right? And so we got to, this is when I think that's really key to this whole question of generating revenue for content, is that historically, this type of content, which I'll call supporting documentation, is not seen, it's seen as a cost, right? It's seen like testing compared to development. It's a cost. Or the customer support teams are seen as a cost to a cost because you're only charging like 12% support, whereas not the case for some companies. I work for a company, it's 50%. Yeah, maintenance and support costs a lot of money, but that's because for companies like this, they're able to do that because you got huge enterprise customers, so you can charge more for support, right? But most of our field, all the support, all the software companies and stuff, you can't charge that much. So I charge in between 10 and 15% for support. That's the maximum you can get out of it because you're pushing people to new versions anyways. You're not trying to support older versions. See, there's a whole thing in that too. How many versions you can support in parallel, right? So all this comes into play. And and so a lot of people don't read the manuals until they got a problem. So they're not seen as a kind of a not seen as a selling content, right? It's seen as something you ought to have. Now you talk to legal people, and they will say that if you have legal things that say you have to have content, technical documentation, user manuals, and certain things to be able to sell the product, then there's a legal issue that if you don't have the content, then you get fined. So it's actually part of the sales process. But see, it's not always seen as that, right? It depends on how you sell it. I sell it this way. I sell it as a legal necessity. I've always sold translation. When there's a legal, and I'm bringing up different things here, different things to kind of show this, that when I sold translation, I would focus on language that had legal regulations and stuff, where they had legal mandates. They have to do the language. Those languages in certain, like the United States, I'd sell it in certain states. I'd sell Haitian Creole in Florida, or I'd sell Spanish in Florida because it's an official language, right? And the whole thing that now in New Jersey having their language accessibility, that's a big thing right now. So this is a great thing for these things and it comes down to the whole thing of the content side of, you got to have documentation to support the product. Even at Caterpillar, we had the same thing too. 30 years ago, we couldn't ship these $1 million machines 30 years ago to the European Union for European countries unless there was a user manual and the service documentation in the language of the country in which the machine was received. Okay, now it may have been transported, internally between European countries, but the country that bought it, you got to have you got to have all that documentation in French or in Spanish or whatever, in German, right? Then they may be able to transfer it to other countries. But so that's why we had a huge multilingual translation department. The whole content, technical information division at Caterpillar is so big because we added we had to sell these machines. 50% of sales was international. So you had to have these. We had to do the international languages. We had to do all the other European languages and Asian languages to sell the machines to those countries. And so the content was a revenue generating business. And I think about it because I think back, that's 30 years ago, and I was always working in that. That was my first job in industry. So that, after academia, and it taught me a lot about thinking about how to generate revenue, right? And with content. And then, just like I said, doing work in translation, having sold, to make some language accessibility regulations, all stuff. that is really that help kind of focus on how to generate revenue, right? For sales or support. Which support, if you get 10%, 15%, even 50% of revenue off of support contracts, then the content's good. It just depends. You don't want to overdo the content, right? You don't want to boil the ocean with the content and make too much, right? There's that whole thing. But so I'm kind of prefacing with all that, right? And I'm already 11 minutes. So I'm trying to think about that too. But the thing of how to generate, I've seen a lot of this commercialization of content over the past 7 years, 7, 8 years. I've seen a lot of comments about this. Want to do this from a lot of colleagues and peers in the industry that haven't done this before, right? Because they haven't been in sales. And so they're really kind of reticent to doing it because they don't know how it works. So they ask a lot of questions. And it's really interesting. I saw some comments about people that went to TCOM, people that went to different conferences, actually, during the past few weeks. October, November, kind of big conference and things in our language field, right? Language content field is kind of the big moment to do all the conferences. There are lots of webinars too, but I see a lot of people that are running around doing conferences, and they said it's really interesting to see when they go into different conferences in Europe with different audiences. They said you go to TCOM, it's the content and translation audience, technical writing, and marketing content maybe, and technical content, right? And translation of all that. But they said you go to other conferences like Language and Media or Translating for Europe and all these other conferences where it's a completely different audience. Government folks and all kinds of things where the people are completely different. They might even be people from different marketing departments, from governments, from suppliers, from all kinds of stuff. Completely different people that are not involved in the language industry at all. That is language per se. They're dealing with content, but specific types of content. So you might deal with economic things, water supplies, food. When you're doing things for governments or NGOs, you're doing completely different things, right? So your content is a lot more wider, and so it could have all kinds of topics. So it's a lot. I mean, I did this for meeting agendas for the European Commission for my doctoral work, so I know all the different types of content they were dealing with because I was using their data. And the issue is, how do you convert, or how do you prove and justify the revenue? And there's a difference between revenue generating, revenue bearing, or revenue generating, same thing, right? Versus revenue enabling. These are two different things, very different things. Sorry for the cough, but I'm still dealing with this bronchitis thing, post-bronchitis thing, I don't want to call it. The key here, and I think it's a really tough thing to kind of consider, is how do you prove this, right? Now, the first thing people do is say we have to have this documentation. So like I said, it's a legal mandate, got to have it. So we're proud of it. But then how do you prove the value of all these? And it's really interesting to see. The problem is you don't know how many people read the manual, right? You have no idea. Unless you make it download the manual, if they download it or not, right? This is the key thing. But you can't know if they read a paragraph or not, right? Unless they complain about the paragraph and tell you about it, right? Through a ticket. Saying it's wrong. Some information wrong. But the video content's great. And the reason why I love videos, and I do a lot of videos, I'll be honest about this, is because I know if the people watch the video or not. And I know the average length of the video watching, right? So I know if my videos are watched. My shorter videos get watched more. My longer videos get watched less. But if I'm targeting my content with the longer videos, very niche, targeted reply, like this one to you, very targeted, you're going to watch it. And you can watch maybe most of the whole thing, depending if I keep it interesting for you, right? But then I might chop it up into subsections that and make those into little videos for little other pieces of the content, right? That's content repurposing. Another topic, or authoring memory, I call it. I'm kind of the major publisher at the top the thing of authoring memory, right? Danny Brockman came up with the term, and I've tried this, and I'm the one that's kind of made it, kind of talking about it for the most, in dozens of articles, right, and videos. But the whole thing of this, making it revenue, it's tracking it. And see, when you have videos, you can track the stuff because you can track the views, you can track the user engagement, you can track specific things about stats, the user engagement in a way that's anonymous, right? But the problem is in downloading. If the download, because the people always ask you, download this stuff, give us your name and your email stuff. So that's not anonymous. So you get into the whole GDPR stuff and all the data privacy and stuff. You get all that, right? And you can't know if they read a paragraph, right? Or as you can in the video. If you do a series of videos on a bunch of what's new videos. I've done a lot of voiceovers for a lot of videos for products, so I know how this works, right? They're all 3-minute videos. And so you can track how many views you got, right? And what's the viewing time and what's the average viewing time and all that. So you can track. So you can see how you can see the user engagement. Can't do that in written documentation. It's really tough to do. Unless it's online. And if people make comments about it, right? So that's why a lot of people are going to online content, and then you can make comments at the sentence or paragraph level, right? And so you can make bug reports. But then the people take the time to do it. Are they reading it and watch? Are they watching? See, watching, you know what they're doing. And a lot of stuff, I'm not saying the video is better. I'm saying that video is the way that people are going because it's faster to consume it. The problem is you can't index and scan it, right? You can't search for stuff in videos yet. Unless you got transcripts that you can search the transcripts of the video, right? But written content, you can do searching, so you can search on keywords. I do this all the time, right? When I want something, I search the keywords across books and stuff because I like darn version. I'll search on it, I'll go look up the stuff, and then I'll go read it, right? But you can't do that in videos. That's why I got to make shorter videos and make them shorter, incremental video listening time. Very opposed to what I'm doing right here, this longer video. Maybe I'll chop this one up too. We'll see. But this is the key thing here in making things revenue bearing or revenue generating, rather than revenue enabling, is finding ways to turn these. One of the things that we struggled with in this year, and I'm not the one that's made this up. Thomas Edwards and Jessica Rathke have been talking about this too. I'm pretty sure it's them. I'm trying to think of who, or it's been maybe someone else. Said this in one of the. There's so many webinars right now and conferences that it's hard to keep track of this. But I'm pretty sure that they were talking about the whole thing of we don't have. I'm pretty sure Thomas and Jessica talked about the fact that our professional services, we're doing commoditized word and content publication rather than selling professional services. And so a lot of industries sell professional services. And I did that in telecom. I sold professional services. And that's where you make the money, right? So you don't work on commoditization. You work on services. You're selling a service. And the key in this whole content stuff, and even at Sister and I used FAQs to sell a professional services customer support. That's how I was able to get funding to be able to do stuff, because I had to prove it where I needed to get more headcount to work on things, right? Because I needed people to answer all the questions of customer support rather than me as a director doing all the license activations. Just that's a waste of time and money. But I built up the content that the people could use and they could do their work, right? So that for me was a content that was a revenue generating thing, because the more customers you answer the questions quickly, you get rid of their questions. I mean, there were ways we could avoid it actually having those questions. That's the better way to do it. But by me being able to spend less time answering license activation questions by having other colleagues with with lesser skills. And I'm not trying to say that I have better skills. I just say that certain skills I have other people can't do. So it's better to have other people like interns or junior colleagues to work on the focus on things and learn that area. Have me working on the selling the professional services, right? Selling the stuff rather than just answering support questions, which is not just rather because the whole thing you got to do this to keep the customers. All about customer retention, right? There's a whole thing there too. But the whole thing was that using your skill set to do the more selling and to sell, upsell, cross sell, the additional professional service at the top of the software is the thing that makes money, right? Because those hours are totally expertise revenue generating things. So it's not about the content. It's not specific the content. It's about the expertise and how you use that content. This is what consultants are for. This is where companies, big companies that have consultants like SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, all that have content, but they also have consultants to help you implement it. The revenue generating things, they have consultants, so you're selling your expertise, right? And so I always try to focus on using that expertise and experience turned into consulting and professional services because that's where you make the money. So those are my thoughts. And I say any of the big solution providers, big solution providers, and let's think of big companies that do this too in our language industry. So think of all the big transport. Transporters are great because they actually have niche areas they focus on. I used to work for them too, so they have niche products, niche areas, and it's not just about language; it's about meeting specific needs in specific medical industry, financial SOC stuff. Certain types of industries that are focusing on medical. That's where they're focusing. And so, the whole life sciences area and clinical trials, they get all a bunch of products focusing on that. That's how they do it. But they're not the only one. You got, Lionbridge, SDL, RDF, what they call it. But the whole thing is, those are big companies out on the translation side. They're doing it multilingually. The problem is on the content side, where you're maybe not translating. You're just doing this the author the source language content. Maybe not. You might translate, it might not. This whole thing, but it's finding ways to do it, just like these other companies have done it in the language industry, and at least the language translation. Just find ways to do it like the big ones have done it. Right? Those are selling the biggest pies, lots more pies and bigger pies. How to do that, and I think that this is the key. And there aren't really a lot of big companies doing big deals on the content side only, right? It's usually on the multi-language translation vendor side where they're doing a lot of this, and they include source content in it. They got source content things too. What SDL is Tridian, and a lot of them have they have these CMSs and stuff they integrated in. So that's how they do it. But I think we have to learn from them and how they do it. But we don't have enough in the. We need to be if more companies learn how to do it. I'm not we because I've been doing it for a long time, but finding companies that are able to do this, are able to focus on this, and get a lot of smaller vendors too, and how they try to fit into the workflow, selling all the pies and stuff. It's kind of tough, and then it's all about selecting vendors and be able to get in and how you fit in the workflow too, because they're really complex workflows. And I made other videos about the complexity of this whole thing. The language industry is a very complex thing with a lot of layers, and lots of tools that are all not always interoperable, right? So this makes it really tough. Whereas a lot of industries, we have interoperable things. I mean, think about it in your industries of your computers. If you want something that is completely compatible, you buy a Macintosh, right? An Apple, because it's been tested on all the platforms. It might still have bugs, but it's been tested, right? And so the limited amount of devices, so you don't have to test as much. You can spend more time focusing on the better testing. The problem is you buy an Android, you have 10 zillion different types of devices possible, and then all the applications that go with that, right? And then you think of Windows and how wide that is, and how many. I mean, I've got Windows, Android, and Apple. I don't have Mac. I got Apple only, just an old second generation iPad and an iPhone, right? And I can see the differences. I can see all my problems in my peripherals and stuff. Are always with my Windows app. Always my Windows computer. Always. Because it's the widest scale, widespread stuff of, and there are many bugs in that. I've got probably less problems with my Android, but I don't use as much my tablet. I use a lot less apps on it, and they're very focused apps. I use the social media apps and a few other things, but not a whole lot. Maybe email. So that's and then my iPad, an iPhone. I can see it's been heavily tested in general, and usually they're going to be selling the apps, and now they're going to. There people have money to buy the iPhone, right? Mine's a corporate iPhone, but you're aiming at people that have a little bit more money when they're getting to make an iPhone, an Apple app, right? Compared to if you're making an Android app, people with Android don't have as much money, right? That's the kind of thing. So I've been making lots of comments in a lot of different areas, and just trying to show anecdotes. There isn't one anecdote. I can't make a Twitter sentence. Boom, this is it. This fits. It's not one size fits all. It doesn't work. Can't use the Trump style, right? Just make one step and then 140 character tweet and it answers everything, or one liner. I think that it kind of depends, and I think this is where we have to kind of do it. And I'm glad I can kind of give some thoughts on this and how I do it. I've been doing it for a long time, and how I would do it if I were in the situation, in the shoes of a lot of other people, how they're trying to do it today. But this is how my approach. So thanks for spending the 26 minutes listening to this video, and I hope that helped. Even with my Halloween voice, hopefully it will disappear in the next few weeks as we try to get rid of it with some medications. Thank you so much.